Welcome to Life Rebounding. I want to continue to look at Ephesians 1 and verse 11 in particular, where we read, "In him we were chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will." And I want to phrase it this way for us, that we were planned before we were perfected. Now let me give you two choices. The first choice is you can have key lime pie, or the second choice is you can have apple pie, the kind that your mother makes that's your favorite. Now that seems like kind of a trivial choice, right? Well, whatever your choice may be, you're going to enjoy it one way or the other. That is, especially if you're like me and you love both. What Paul reminds us of in verse 11 is that there are some choices that are made that aren't so trivial, and not the least of which is the fact that God has chosen us to be his ambassadors, to be his people, to be his children, representing him in this world today. He says, in him we've been chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. And he reminds us that our choices are not trivial ourselves either, that the choices that we make about how we'll live our lives, how we'll serve, how we'll love, even who we'll love, the things that we'll stand for, the values that our lives will represent, are made up of multiple choices that we make each day. Indeed, our character is framed by the choices that we make each day on how we will live out those values. And so one of the things that Paul's reminding us is these choices, when they fit into the longer perspective of what God is doing in the world and he's inviting us to do, can make a big difference in our lives and the lives of people around us. We're reminded that we're chosen, that God had you and me in mind before anything began. He had you and me in mind because there are specific things that he sees that we can do that nobody else can do in terms of furthering his kingdom's purposes. And he reminds us that we're planned long before we'll ever be perfect, because what God does in the world through us does not depend on our perfection. It simply depends on our relationship to him and our willing to walk in the right direction, which is walking towards him and towards conformity to his image in our lives. And so when we read that God works out everything, it's about God's inward working in our lives. All the details that are being worked out according to his plan, and all the details that he's working out in the soul of his church. And these are part of the everything that God is working out in conformity with his purpose and will. We were planned long before we ever got our lives together. God has purposes for us long before we ever get our lives all together, because that's never really going to happen until we reach heaven itself. In the meantime, we rest in the knowledge that we have been planned, that God had us in mind. He's working everything out in his love in our lives and for the lives of people around us. It may look ugly in this particular moment, and certainly there are lots of moments in our lives when things do look ugly. But all we can do is trust in God's plan, that he is at work. He hasn't walked away. He hasn't absented himself from the situation. He is always present, always at work, and he is always working at a plan that is for his glory and honor, and ultimately will be for the benefit of all of us. Can we make that statement of trust today? That we will trust that we have been chosen for this day, for this moment, for this season and time, for this generation, to serve God's purposes and to bring blessing and honor to him and to encourage and comfort those who are around us. May that be your goal today as you seek to live for him.